All right, got the new radiator, so we're gonna take the old one, get it drained, and start removing some of the stuff and switching it around. So the plan is we're gonna put a normal radiator in with a cap on it. So this pressurized overflow expansion tank will come out. We'll end up taking this T fitting of this hose, getting rid of this, what do they call it, the flushing T. I hate these things, they end up cracking and leaking all the time. So I'm probably gonna take and put a straight connector from here with the hose going right to here and get rid of these 3 potential leak spots, and then this overflow tank will get taken out. The one hose here, I have to tap and thread the radiator so that I can put a nipple on it and have this hose actually end up going back into the radiator, because this is the one that comes off the bottom of the throttle body. But yeah, we'll see what kinds of problems arise. I think when I get it in there, I'm gonna end up having to trim this metal back in here, open the radiator up more, but we'll look at it once it's in there. All right, here's my replacement radiator. This is the fitting that was for a sensor that I'm gonna have to put threads in here and put a nipple in, so that way I can connect this hose into the cooling system here. But otherwise, it's a 3-core, came off eBay, cheapo. It was supposed to be a V8 S10 conversion radiator. So, but fits in there pretty good. I'm gonna have to make some new mounts. I don't know, let me focus in here a little bit. The original mount, like the radiator had a top inlet and a bottom outlet, so it flowed down instead of across. And so the radiator was taller than it was wide. And so the other radiator wouldn't fit low enough and would hit the frame rail and was sticking up above the top of the support. So now I'm gonna actually mount this one inside here instead of being out here. And it should give me more room for fans. All right, so I went ahead and I drilled the hole out a little bit bigger so that I could use the tap. And then I took and I put an 1/8 inch thread into this fitting, which will give me that as my hose going back into the radiator. So it's got trainee cooler, lower hose, and then this is the hose coming off the throttle body. And then the radiator cap can go here, and I can eliminate this T, this water bottle, this hose will connect there, and then I'll be able to attach a heater hose to here, which will get rid of the flushing T. So, should work great. So I've taken this steel plate, drilled holes in it for the nipple of the rubber mount for the radiator support. And I got those located on the bottom for that plate. I took a piece of weather stripping and kind of bent the top rail of the radiator a little bit so it'll fit there, and then that'll tuck under here and give me a nice tight airtight seal across the top of the radiator. So now I just have to make a bracket that holds this and then put a bolt through it here, and same thing over here. And then the radiator will be mounted. I'll put some kind of a guard in here. I was going to enlarge this, but I don't think I need to. I think I just need to kind of put a piece to block off the airflow to force it through the radiator. And I think my fans are going to be pushers on the front, and that'll still leave me enough room on the back if I decide to put a puller. And maybe I'll run 3 fans depending on if this thing gets hot or not. All right, so I removed all of this, the T and everything. I ended up going to a 90-degree fitting instead of that straight one, which allowed that to fit on there good. I had to cut this pipe shorter, recut all the hoses again. Actually, I'm gonna move that hose clamp because I don't like it touching that heater hose right there. That looks like a puncture waiting to happen, so I'm gonna spin that around so that sharp edge isn't touching there. Yeah, it's fitting pretty good. The cap is really close to the radiator support, so I'm gonna definitely have to pay attention to that when I mount it to make sure that I can get this on and off without having to cut a big notch out of here. I just have to make sure I put it in a position where there's enough room to get it off, but otherwise she's getting really close. So I flushed the coolant out of it again because obviously sitting with no antifreeze in it for a few years got a lot of rust in it, and the coolant I took out was clean, but it got a lot of rust from just running it for the few days that I had the old radiator in there. So did do a coolant flush, flushed it all out. We should be able to get these upper mounts made and then get this thing put back together. And then obviously, like I said, I got to relocate this too and figure out how I'm going to hang this. And then I'll put an extra overflow bottle here, or possibly I may relocate the battery to make a place for the air filter up here. I haven't decided yet. I either have to go down and under the radiator with the air filter or get it off to the side somehow. So I'll figure that out once we get there. All right, here's what I came up with for the radiator. I took a piece of metal, bent it a little bit. It's gonna fit underneath here and bolt into that hole. And then I obviously drilled the top so that way I can put the rubber mount in. And so I'll get these in position and bolted in. And then I think what I'm gonna do, because the bottom is still kind of just sitting there and needs to be tack welded in, I'll have the top mounted and then I'll go underneath the car and shim this lower plate right where it needs to be. I don't know if I can focus on that or not. Yeah, this metal plate right here that I have the holes drilled and the rubber mounts mounted in here, I'll shim that up till it's the right tightness so that the radiator is good and supported. So, but yeah, it was just a simple little bracket I made. All right, so this is the plate on the bottom of the radiator. You can see the holes that I drilled through for the rubber mounts to hold the radiator right here. Took this piece of channel steel, just quick connected it, put a little spacer here so that way it's pushed up tight at the top. Holds the radiator in there really nice. Should definitely work. I am gonna move the transmission cooler higher. Like I said, the original radiator used to come all the way down to here. There was a bracket that made it drop down. Actually, I don't know where it is. I just took it off a little bit ago. So that's why this was down here. There used to be a piece of metal that went across this low. But what I believe I'm gonna do is take and turn this sideways and tip it up inside there, and then put the cooling fans on the front and maybe put one on the back here. I don't like how close this sensor is gonna be, but we'll see what happens. All right, I just got done mounting up the fans. I decided to go one pusher in the front and one puller on the rear on opposite sides of the core. I soldered the wires together and I got my wiring ran over here to run up and make a relay, or put in a relay. So front one's grounded straight to the frame, and then heavy gauge wire that'll run over to a relay. Yeah. It's all securely mounted. I may put a little bit of a washer in between here to tighten it up a tad, but it's actually pretty snug. Everything's there except for I still need to make this connection with the chunky heater hose, so, and then fill it up with coolant, but it's coming together. So these are the flushing tees that I hate. The plastic on a lot of them just seems like it doesn't hold up to the heat, and they end up being something that eventually cracks. I never use these. I would always just pull the hose off and force water both directions rather than putting in a tee, or if I did use a tee, it would be as a temporary install and then I would take it out. So what I'm gonna do instead is I have this brass hose mender. Dayco makes it. This is the 5/8 size. And so instead of having a piece of plastic that can crack, I'm gonna use this piece of brass, and then I'll connect this hose to there and get rid of, well, I don't need the overflow bottle anymore, so I don't need this plastic tee, and then I don't need this flushing tee either. So that's what we're gonna do with that. All right, and I found a couple different relays in my drawer filled with relays. I am gonna wire them on two separate ones, even though these are only 80-watt fans, so they're only pulling about 6.5 amps at 12 volts, probably closer to 5 at 14 when the engine's running. but I want double redundancy. If one fails, I want at least the other one to work. That's why I'm going to run 2 separate ones. All right, so this is what I came up with. It's kind of my sorted mess of colors here, but I have 12 volts on an ignition fused going to the relays to turn them on with the key. I'm feeding both relays off of the single fuse because most of the time they're going to run off the same circuit anyway. So I have a 25 amp fuse in here, more than plenty for what I'm going to do. It's going to go straight to the battery. This is going to be a ground circuit. So these two are tied together. These two are tied together. The reason I'm running 2 relays is this wire is going to run to the PCM to turn off that check engine light, saying that I don't have the cooling fan relay hooked up. But the cooling fan is going to turn on at 226 from the factory, and that's too late for me. I instead installed a thermostat switch that'll kick on at 190 in the center of the radiator. And the way I wired the relays is when this first relay kicks on, it's actually going to feed power into this relay, which will feed out to both fans. This runs one fan, this relay runs the other fan. And then if the computer were ever to turn on the fan or test to see that it's connected, it would only turn on the passenger side fan. But they're both going to run at 190, so it'll probably never get up to 226. And so this second relay is basically here just to trick the computer into thinking that it has control on the cooling fans. But I have them set up to turn on sooner. So we're gonna stuff this back behind. I'm gonna clean up the wires a little more, stuff it back behind the battery, and I still have to hook this one wire up to the computer. But that should take care of that one check engine light code that I had. Yeah, that's where we're at. All right, so I've turned the ignition on and I'm gonna just test the system really quick. So if the computer turns on the fan, it's only gonna operate the driver's side fan. So when I tick this on, that fan's running and this one is not. When the radiator gets up to 190 degrees, it'll actually kick on both fans at the same time. So here it's a little bit louder. Both fans are actually pulling now. So system works. Okay, and originally I had marked this as fan and had this stuck over here. What I did, instead of running, my relays are on this side and the computer's on this side, so I just went into the plug, figured out which pin it was, which was pin 10, and then snipped it, and then I quick did an ohms test just to verify. Well, I did an ohms test first, but verified that I had the right wire, and this blue wire is the same one in the harness over there. So now I can hook this PCM wire straight to here, and that'll operate the fans. All right, we're back on the ground. Cooling system is, I haven't ran it yet, but it's full. There's coolant still in there. The only thing I have left is the overflow bottle. Pretty much everything else is done. We're gonna let it run today and get it all warmed up, make sure the cooling fans kick on. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of snow out there, so a 2-wheel drive truck isn't probably the safest thing to test on a snowy road, but maybe by this afternoon it'll clean up a little bit. So I do have to find that overflow bottle though and figure out what I'm gonna do with that. All right, got her warming up here to get the antifreeze all circulated. Listen to the sound of this thing. Sounds pretty good for a Mazda. Give her a couple quick revs here. Should be a lot of fun. Alright, so the fan just tested, or the computer just tested the cooling fan. And the computer's turning that fan on and off. Kind of surprised at that. I thought it wouldn't turn on until 226. Alright, let's close. First test drive. We're gonna take it down and pick up some parts from this salvage yard to get some parts for Subaru. So I'm gonna see how it drives. And it's snowy and a two-wheel drive, so I'm not driving one-handed. We will pull back up and let you know. All right, so I stopped at the gas station and threw $6 worth of gas in it. Not $6, 6 gallons, because I thought my fuel gauge wasn't working right, and it's reading over full, so I may have to take that back apart, so because I did not fill the tank full. But it started back up and I got gas, so we're gonna drive across town and go get some parts. Yeah, so for not giving it gas and just kind of coasting, it's not too bad, but if I hit the accelerator, it gets pretty noisy. But it rides like a decent truck. All right, so I made it back and I'm on the hoist here. The bolts, I can't turn them, but it looks to me like, I don't know if I can zoom in here. Yeah, it looks like the head of this bolt isn't all the way down. It won't tighten up anymore and it's torque tight, but I don't think it's making full contact. And I don't know. I heard something when I was shifting. Kind of sounded like the drive shaft was moving a little bit. So seeing that, I don't like it. There was a lot of rust on this flange because the drive shaft hadn't been in it for a few years. So I think I'm gonna pull the drive shaft back out, run a tap through these holes, and sand the whole surface of this. So, but we made it back, so that's good. All right, so I pulled it off of there. I can't really say that it was moving, but you can see the rust scale. And it had been sitting for a long time. So yeah, I'm gonna run a tap through these and then I'm gonna sand this whole surface off because it's really rough. But I was laying on my back putting the drive shaft in the first time, so now I can do it on the hoist. It's gonna be a lot easier to get this cleaned up. So I'm gonna take care of that right now and get her bolted back together. All right, so I got the surface all cleaned up nice and smooth. I don't feel any large chunks of rust holding it up anymore. I was able to run a tap and tap out all 4 of the mounting holes and run it through. And I sandblasted the bolts. So I'm gonna put some Loctite on them, get them put in, tighten down, should take care of that concern. So the LT1 swapped Mazda runs. The only thing I need to do is the air cleaner system. I gotta come up with a better air cleaner. And yeah, we'll get some footage, but it just melts the tires. It's a instant 60 miles an hour on the speedometer as soon as you step on the throttle, and it's crazy to try and drive it, but can't really do burnouts and take video at the same time myself, so those will be coming soon. I'm just gonna get this uploaded and show you that it's running and working. Cooling fans seem to be working great. Yeah, I think this is gonna turn out to be a fun little truck. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and we'll be bringing you smoky burnouts.